So here's the obligatory one slide. So this is the marketing bit, this is us. We're Pure Leapfrog. Basically, we provide low-cost debt, finance for projects, and we provide expertise. So we have a network of professional services providers. I think we've worked with a lot of people in the room. Hopefully we've helped. Very quick word on debt, not the replacement for equity in any way, but I think a complementary thing. And what we're trying to do is bring low-cost finance, social finance into the space, because I think it's the thing that will really start accelerating the way we pay for projects. But that's all I was going to say about us. Where to start? Getting started, I pondered quite a bit what to actually say, particularly to a room of people who've probably already got started in one way, shape or form, and some of you have even finished. And I started thinking about sort of what's happened, and I've been in this space for a while on a low carbon front, but only the last year or so have I learned really about community energy, which has been a bit of a privilege. And what I've seen is that there have been some pioneers out there who have really fought to get projects off the ground, and I don't think that battle's over by any means. But there's a lot of talk now about professionalising the industry, and that doesn't mean that people have been unprofessional in the way that they've done it. I mean, quite the contrary. But there's a need to standardise, there's a need to scale up. It's a very, very small sector in the scale of things, although there's such a huge amount of energy in it. So what I wanted to do was talk about what we've learned, and I thought, well, big business are always trying to sort of nick the ideas of community engagement from this sector. So I thought, well, what can we actually learn from the management world? What can we learn from you know, some of the textbook stuff out there that businesses get trained in and refreshed time and time again that we don't have the privilege of in community sector? And I started thinking about that battle, and I started thinking about management. And rightly or wrongly, I've decided this is possibly the last time, but for the very first time, I'm going to relate Sun Tzu's The Art of War to the community energy space. This may or may not work, but bear with me. So if you don't know Sun Tzu, also known as Master Sun, which I thought was relatively relevant as well, one of the most respected treatises, he was about 500 BC, and wrote a treatise on strategy for war. Which I thought possibly was vaguely relevant. But it deals with more than just strategy. It's drawn on by a lot of management texts, but a lot of project management on leadership, management skills, teamwork, team building. And I thought it might be a useful thing to hang things off. It's also, I've got 5 things, so that seems to be the theme of the day. So, thus we may know that there are 5 essentials for victory. First thing, he will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. This isn't about not taking on the battle. That I want to make absolutely clear. It's not about limiting ambition, but it is about knowing the battle that you're going to fight. I think there's a temptation when you're doing something on a community basis to try and solve too many problems at once. We see some amazing projects coming to us, and you know, a lot of the thinking that I put into this was about, you know, what has made the really successful projects that we've seen and that we've supported, even in a little way. And it's about knowing what you're trying to achieve and not trying to do absolutely everything, because your business competitors won't be. They're just trying to make money. Everything else is a means to an end. And if you're trying to do everything, then the risk is that you take your eye off the ball. And key thing is now, if people have done this before, copy them. Use what they've done, tried and tested, don't reinvent the wheel. We keep saying this over and over again, but learning from others is so important in this sector, and I think we're going to see more of that over the next year. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. So I think this is back to the bloke that worries you on your team a little bit, but it's mainly about the fact that you're not, if you're doing this from in your spare time, you're not going to have at your fingertips the resources that a business in the same position would have. And I don't know if you've seen this. I always at these events look around. Has anyone seen people doing that in conversations? Because there's this gesture that you see all the time that, you know, wearing my such and such hat and now wearing my, you know, everybody is doing 54 things at once in this industry, and you've got to learn which hats fit and be honest about what you do and don't have in your team. Be confident about it. You can achieve anything if you put your mind to it, but identify the gaps up front and go out and find out how to fill those gaps, either locally by recruiting more people onto the team or by looking at organisations like ourselves, the people that are presenting today, and the stuff that's out there to help you. And something's been lost there, but be clear on the capacity of volunteers. You know, people are going to be limited in their time, and if you wear them out early on, the project will stall. So obvious stuff, but sometimes worth saying out loud. I'm afraid we have comedy frogs in Leapfrog presentations. It's obligatory. Absolutely key. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout its ranks. Obvious, isn't it? You're doing a community energy project, you're doing it because you want to ... There is an assumption that because you're doing this altruistically, you're all on the same page. And actually, there are more motivations in a community project than I've ever seen in any business endeavour. People are trying to do so many different things, and that's absolutely fine. It can support lots of different motivations and lots of different objectives. But you've got to be a bit careful about understanding the why as well as the what you're trying to do. And I think when you set out on a project, and often a project will start with a particular installation or target. You might set out with, we're going to do this one thing. And when that doesn't come off, that's fine. You can move on to something else. But if you haven't got the why sorted, it's going to be very difficult to pick the next project and be very, very clear that, everybody's still on board. Because if somebody really, really wanted to do a project around a brand new technology, they're going to lose interest when you move on to something that might be a little bit more mainstream, but is unique in that particular context. So, smiley frogs. He will win who prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. Now, I was very tempted on the last half of that to talk about planning departments, but I'm really focusing on the first half of the sentence with this. You need a plan. Often we see projects that are very, very professional and they have actually written a business plan, and it feels a bit dull and a little bit, cosmopolitan, but it's essential. Even if you're just planning out what the key milestones are, know when the fit rate's going to drop, know when something is going to come along and sidewall you, and plan for it. And plan to plan, work out how you're going to make decisions. When and how are you going to decide which projects to do? Who's going to make that decision? We do see projects getting really hampered by factions within groups and things that really, were about a lack of planning up front, a lack of also, the last point of getting clear on what you're trying to achieve and that everybody's on the same page. You have to stay agile, though. There is no point in setting out a plan and saying we are going to deliver this in 10 years' time and we're going to go away at it until we all die of the effort. Stay agile, but do have a plan and do write it down and do be a bit businesslike about that. And this is another one. Parking the second half for a moment. He will win who has military capacity. Leadership is so important. I mean, that is obvious, isn't it? But it is one of those things that just differentiates one group from another. It's absolutely essential, but it needs the support of the team. And I think point made earlier that you do tend to have people who are absolutely passionate and they can leave people behind if the team doesn't get behind them and you don't go through that sort of storming process of getting yourselves together and getting on the same page. But don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, just because you're the leader, you don't have to know everything. And very, very few leaders out there. You'll find your counterparts in business having regular training courses. They'll have business mentors. They'll have advice and help and support coming out of their ears. So don't try and do it single-handedly. Interference is another issue. I think this sector I've just been blown away by the amount of interference. The idea that, you're supposed to do something this technical in your spare time when the legislative landscape just moves every 5 minutes. Hopefully that is improving. Hopefully with a strategy in place and a bit more commitment, that is going to happen less. But unfortunately, interference by the sovereign is something that maybe we're just going to have to keep battling. So, I started out on this, getting ready, and the first thing I thought was getting ready for battle, and I think it has been a bit of a battle, but it now is becoming doing business, and really just hopefully can now be scaled up. So congratulations to anyone who's done it, and all the best and good luck, and we hope we can support the people who are looking to do it. And I'm just going to have to apologise for the next slide.